Hi, and thank you for listening. This is Sherry Andrea, and I appreciate you. Um, okay, so first of all, let me tell you where I can find you. Where I can find you. Where you can find me. You can find me at sherryspeaks.com, where you can find 80 plus attunements from starting at $2.50 and up. Also, you can find other services there, such as coaching, psychic readings. Right now, the psychic reading is still on sale. Well, technically, the psychic reading, it's psychic reading / coaching. It doesn't matter which one you want. It's still on sale. It's $15 for 30 minutes. I'll put the link in the description box, but if you're like driving or on the road or something, it's sherryspeaksnow.simplybook.me. But I'll put the link in the description box so that you can find it. Also, I do have a special going right now for new clients. So if you've never had a reading or coaching or anything with me, then $5, you can get 20 minutes just so that you can try it out and see how you like it. Try out a reading or try out a coaching, whichever one you prefer. So you can, if you need to contact me, ask me a question about how things work, how to do whatever you need to do or find whatever you need to find. Of course, you can contact me through the website on the contacts page. So let's get to it. Just remember to please subscribe. That'll help me out. If you subscribe and you like the video, that'll help me and I'll appreciate it. Of course, feel free to comment. I'd love for you to share your views, your experiences. They help a lot of people. When people scroll down to the comments, sometimes a lot of you are sharing your experiences or sharing what you've tried, what you've worked, and that really helps people. So please, if you have something to share or you can share your experience about what I'm talking about, that would help. Of course, if you can, please donate, even if it's only $1. And you can do that by going to sherryspeaks.com/donate. And there are multiple ways to donate, from PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, which is $Sherry Speaks. Also, you can donate directly with your debit or credit card. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, the title of this, I gotta look at my notes. Title of this video is Communicating with Spirit Loved Ones That Have Passed On. I don't do many videos like this. This probably won't be a long video because what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you my experiences with connecting. And this is kind of going back to when I first, fully opened metaphysically and spiritually. And this was back when I was first learning, practicing, a lot of practicing, and spending a lot of time on the internet, on message boards, chatting with people, practicing, in chat rooms and everything. But back then, also, my son was very young back then. I'm trying to think. I want to say 3-ish. He was definitely between the age of 3 and 4. And it's not unusual for kids at that age to be able to easily see spirits, talk to spirits, play with spirits. My son was playing with this little girl, this little spirit girl. And at the time she came along, there was, you could tell, there's like, when it comes to your children, there's a definite change. Not in them so much, but in some of the things they do. Like all of a sudden they may start doing things that they hadn't been doing. Like all of a sudden, I was doing laundry one day and I had washed towel sheets and stuff, and I'm folding them up. And you know how you just know what you washed. You know when you're missing like a flat sheet, or you know what I mean, because you got the set. So you're like, okay, well, I just folded up the fitted one, but okay, well, what happened to the flat one? And I go out into the living room, and there he is under the flat sheet, like you know when kids play under it like they're making a fort or something. And I didn't get mad. Actually, I was kind of like, he's never done something like that before. Why would he take my sheet and run off my sheet? And the fact that what was odd was I didn't notice it. I didn't even see him do it. It was like something very odd about it, and I knew there was something different about it. So when I come out and I'm like, I was wondering where that sheet went. And, back then, there wasn't much, when I would say something, he wouldn't like kind of fill in the rest. He wouldn't answer me back, or he wouldn't say, oh, it's because this and that. No. And so I would have to keep asking questions and prying. And I remember back then with this little spirit girl, he said to me, I was told not to tell you that you would get mad, that you wouldn't understand. And of course I'm like, you were told not to tell me. And the whole that I was told you would get mad, you wouldn't understand, it didn't really sit well with me. And maybe it was because I was like, I felt like it was something, he didn't come up with that on his own, And so when I kept prying more and more and more, and that's when the little girl, the spirit, that's when the information about that came out. But I wasn't surprised by it because she wasn't the first. My grandfather on my father's side was the first. And back when my son was still sleeping in the bed with me when he was real little. Okay, and this has a point, I promise you. This ties into what we're talking about. Okay, I had already started doing the working with your ancestors. And a lot of people call it different names, but pretty much a lot of people refer to it as working with your ancestors. I can't even tell you why I started doing that with my grandfather. I didn't really know him well when he was alive. I was young when he died. I want to say when he died, I was in middle school. He lived in Georgia. We lived in New York. We would go to Georgia on vacation, usually every year in the summer when we were off from school. And I wouldn't spend a lot of time around him or talking to him because, like, as I recalled, he was always out working, doing things. He wasn't around the house like my grandmother was. I don't even know what it was that made me want to connect with him. But I'll tell you this. And maybe even back then I was being influenced by my guides and my higher self. So I would, every morning, I would make coffee because I'm a coffee lover. I would make coffee. And I have these coffee cups that my mother had given me a set of, but they're like little. They're not like your regular size chunky coffee cup that I like. They're little. And I don't mean little like espresso little, but I mean I'm like small, way smaller than a regular coffee cup size. And I would pour a black cup of coffee in there. Don't even tell me. I don't know how he liked his coffee. I have no idea. Even now, I think back about those things, and I go, how did I know how he wanted his coffee, how he liked his coffee? And when I think back and I think about it, I'm like, I didn't even think about that. I didn't stop to question, well, I wonder if he liked it with sugar, with creamer. No, somehow I just knew he liked his coffee black. Matter of fact, when I go, I'm going to my mother's house tomorrow. I'm going to ask her how he liked his coffee, because now I'm curious to see how I came up with that. But anyway, I would pour him a cup of coffee, and I would sit in on the kitchen counter, the one that's like closest to the dining room area. And then I had bought a 10 of chewing tobacco, which was also, I guess it was, no, was it chewing? I can't remember if I bought chewing tobacco or pipe tobacco, but it was in a little round 10, you know what I mean? And I would put a little bit of that out on a small round plate that was a little bit bigger than saucer size. And that was for him. And then I would light a candle. Now, back then, I was making candles. I've had 10,001 hobbies. Making candles was one of them. And yes, I got into that hobby before I got into metaphysics and spirituality, long before. So I lit a candle that I had made. And I was doing that every morning. It was my way of remembering him, acknowledging him. That was my way of saying, like, I haven't forgotten about you. I think about you. I want to say also at that time that I had read, I had been doing some reading online, and I had read about various ways also, like kind of to pay homage to your ancestors. Okay, so let me tell you what happened from that, though. I was doing that probably for a couple of weeks. I was struggling at the time. I had started reading the book, which was a Law of Attraction book by Lynn Claiborne called, Lynn Claiborne. I don't remember. But I had started reading her book, and it was a Law of Attraction book. And I was struggling with it, though. You know, I was having more bad days than good days. I felt like I was in an endless loop I couldn't get out of some type of negativity. But I was, leaving the coffee and the tobacco every day for a few weeks. My son was sleeping with me, and I hit a period of time. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just kind of got sidetracked, got busy, or what. But there was quite a few days where I didn't do it. I didn't do the coffee. I didn't do the tobacco. I didn't do anything. I didn't do the candle. I don't know if maybe I thought this is having no effect. So I stopped doing it for a few days. So me and my son were in the bed. We have a routine. We watch a little TV, whatever was on at the time, because I had cable at the time. It was like Nickelodeon and something else we used to watch. And then we would, watch that before, we would get in the bed, we would watch that, and then I would wait for him to fall asleep, and then I would turn the TV off. But a lot of times as we were laying there, sometimes, he would chat, he would say things, or we would just goof around and be, like, joking around and giggling and being ridiculous and stupid, right? So, but it was really weird. At one point, he just stopped, got a really serious look on his face that kind of made me be like, what's going on? What? And he kind of was looking off, like he was looking at something. And then he said to me, he said that you're and it was some name that he called me. And I don't mean a name like a bad name, like a 4-letter word name. I mean, like, you're like if it was a child might say, oh, you're a booger, you know what I mean? Something like that. And when he said that, I was just like, oh, Why would you say that? And he's like, I didn't say it. He said it. I said, what? That's what he called you. That's what he said about you. And I'm like, who? This man. And I was like, okay, well, describe this man. He basically described him how my grandfather looked, but then he talked about this hat he had on. When he said about the hat, like, popped in my head, I immediately thought, my grandfather. I don't know how I made that connection, but the one thing I can tell you, the validation then came right after. He said to me, he said he likes the light. Likes the light? And I'm thinking, likes the light? I go, the candle? And my son goes, he looks like he's looking at somebody, like he's like kind of listening to what they're saying. And then he looks at me and he goes, yeah. Now, you might say, well, you might say that's validation, but it might not be. At this point, some people might, that are cynics, might say, you're making something out of nothing. You're making something out of something that, really you can't make truth out of that. But I did get further validation. A couple weeks later, we went over to my parents' house, and my mother on her lanai has it's like an old Chester, but it's like more like an armoire, but the doors on it have glass in it instead of being solid. And she has things in there like pictures and books and different things. And there's a picture of my grandmother and my grandfather sitting in there. And we go out on the lanai, and just suddenly my son turns, looks, and points. And I'm like, what? He's like, that's the man I saw. And I look over. He's pointing at my grandfather's picture. That was my ultimate validation. So now you can see, I hope you can see what I'm getting at. There's a way to make that connection. I mean, I'm sorry, my hands are so ashy. I get a lot of people saying that they want to develop their abilities because they want to talk to their loved one that has passed on. However, I mean, I was talking with someone about that today. That's fine as long as you've gone through the process of closure that you need to, and that this isn't a matter of you holding on and not being willing to let go. But when it comes to and I've talked to a lot of people that work with their ancestors. They're working with them so that as they're on their path, whether they're working on metaphysics or they're working on spirituality, so that they can get help from their ancestors. And this is very powerful. There are a lot more powerful ways to connect with your ancestors, but you better believe, if you're going to call in all your ancestors to help you, if you're going to put that call out, like, I want all my ancestors to come and to help me and to support me, you better darn be sure you're ready. You do not make that call unless you're ready. You do not make that call in a trivial way. So if your mother's passed on and you're just missing her, and really you're having trouble letting go, do not make that call. Because usually when you make that call to all your ancestors and you want them to show up to help you, when they show up, they're expecting you to be ready to get to work. And they do not fool around. Ancestors can be just as nurturing and helpful as they can be tough. So I say one of the best ways, if you want to kind of open up a dialogue with loved ones that have crossed over, is to first start by doing something that is aimed at remembering them every day. Like, for example, my coffee and tobacco thing. Okay, well, like, for example, if it's your mother, what did she like? Did she like fresh cut roses? Did she like fresh flowers? Okay, then make an effort. I mean, you can grow them yourself or plant them and then go out there and cut some. And it doesn't matter if they're just marigolds. It's the thought that counts. It's a thought that counts, not, what type of flowers they are necessarily. But make that effort. Okay, did your mother was her favorite tea with milk? Okay, so make her that every morning and sit on the counter for her next to those flowers. Did your mother smoke? Buy a pack of cigarettes every morning, get that ashtray, light that cigarette. I mean, you don't have to do it in your house if you don't smoke in your house. Okay, so you could do this like on your back porch or something like that. Or you don't have to light the cigarette. You can just put it in the ashtray unlit and put the lighter next to it. That works as well too. If it was a child, it might be their favorite toy. It might be their favorite piece of clothing, but you do something to honor them that is supposed to signify that you're thinking of them, and you do it, every day. That is one of the best ways of opening up that line of communication. What you're trying to do is you're trying to draw them closer, because this will help draw them closer. This will help to, what'll end up usually happening is the same thing like my grandfather. Okay, so I'll finish the story for you. So, because it goes on from there. So, every night after that, when we were getting ready to go to bed and we're laying in the bed, here we go again. He's saying things to my son, and I felt like my son was like, how you have somebody, like, somebody that speaks a language that you can't speak, but then you got this friend that speaks both, and so they're in the middle translating. Well, that's basically what it felt like my son was doing. So it would be my son, my grandfather would come. I would always know because I could see it on my son's face. The way he would sort of kind of be looking off in the distance as though he was looking. Okay, a lot of you know what I'm talking about because your animals do that. Your cats, your dogs do that. Just like suddenly they're like, and they're looking at something and it creeps you out. My dog Lucy, that died quite a few years ago, my dog Lucy used to do that all the time. And I would sometimes I would be like, stop doing that. You're really freaking me out. Because many of the times when she would do it, I would maybe be alone because maybe it would be during the day and Tyler was in school, or it would be late at night, Tyler would be asleep and she would start doing it. I'd be like, stop. You're freaking me out. But you guys know that have pets, you know what I'm talking about. And some of you that have babies know what I'm talking about. Babies do the same thing. Okay, there's this book by Dan Millman. You remember Dan Millman is the one that wrote the book what is it? Peaceful Warrior, and then I got the one that's Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. Oh, those were great books. I'm trying to remember the exact name of the first book. I can't reference it because I actually gave that book away to a teenager that was in their last year of high school, and really glad I did. They weren't into reading fiction because Dan Millman writes books that are they're spiritual lessons, but they're written in fiction. They're written in stories. And she read it and like a few days later came back to me and she said, that book you gave me changed my life. She's been really, that was quite a few years ago. I want to say, man, it's got to be like 6-7 years ago now. And she's doing really well for herself. She's been doing so well. But I remember she came back and told me, she was like, that book just has changed my life. she's like, I'm never going to see things the same way again. Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. But I remember in the second book, I want to say the second book was Way of the Peaceful Warrior. He was in Hawaii, and he was visiting someone, and that had had a young child, a toddler, and then also had a baby, a newborn. And he said that he was standing in the doorway, and he overheard the toddler say to the baby, "Tell me what God is like again. I'm starting to forget." And I thought that's out of both the books, what I read in both those books, that's the line that like totally got me the most. It was like it made some type of light bulb go off of my head. Like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes we see children that stare like that, or that stare at us when we're heavy working on ourselves spiritually. Like maybe we've been praying a lot every day for months to raise our vibrations. And I remember I went to one of my son's basketball games, and I'm sitting in the bleachers, but on the floor, along the sidelines where the team would sit and the coach, and then there would be the long table where the people that are controlling the scoreboard are sitting. And one of the coaches had their twins in a double stroller over there. And at one point, I'm watching the game, and I look over, and I notice, I swear, they're staring at me. They're staring at me. I wasn't sure at first. I was like, maybe they're not staring at me. Maybe they're staring at something else. But I got up to go to the bathroom at one point, and that's how I knew they were staring at me. Because the whole time I was walking, they were following me. And even when I got to the point where they almost couldn't see me anymore, they were in their stroller like this, like trying to see me, peeping around, like almost trying to see me as I went out of view. And then when I came back, they just kept staring at me. They just didn't take their eyes off of me. But something intuitively, or maybe it was my higher self, was trying to explain to me what it was. I knew what it was then. And other instances, a lot of things started happening with not just babies, with dogs, with animals. I have it somewhere. I have the picture of when I was doing a coaching session for a couple. And so they would put me on speakerphone, and they lived in an apartment where they were on the second floor, and they had their sliding glass door open, and their where their apartment was, where the balcony was, there was a golf course, happened to be a golf course next to their apartment building. And I know what that's like, because I lived in an apartment where there was a golf course right next door, connected with the apartment complex, like a small 9-hole golf course, and my balcony looked over the 9th hole. So I understood what they were talking about when they were like, oh, well, our balcony faces one of the holes of the golf course. And as we were doing the coaching session, and I'm talking, and I'm on speakerphone. First, they kept having to chase their kids out of the room, because they put their kids in the room to play. But they were like, this is so odd. Usually we put our kids in the room to play, and they're content to play. But they're like, but now they seem to not want to stay in. They seem to not want to stay in there. They just want to come out. And they were like, I don't understand it. And then finally, the mother said to me, they seem to be attracted to your voice. They seem to want to listen to you. Then, we go on with the coaching session. Usually the coaching session was long, because it was, a couple. It was both of them. And then at one point she stopped, and she goes, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a bird just flew on the balcony, and it's so odd. I've never seen this. It was in Gret. And she said, I've never seen that type of bird fly up on our balcony. She said, as a matter of fact, I've never seen a bird on our balcony. And then so she, we continued on with the session. I swear to you, I don't know, 5-10 minutes later, she's like, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but now there's like 5 birds out on the balcony. And still, I don't think I didn't think anything of it. She didn't think anything of it. But then they kept freaking coming. She's like, I don't understand it. She goes, now there's like 20 birds on her balcony, all different types of birds. She goes, I don't know what's going on. And so she goes to, okay, so the sliding glass door, the glass part was open and the screen was closed, right? So she goes to the door and she's like, I don't know what's going on. She goes, as a matter of fact, one of the birds is a duck. And it's pecking at the screen. Like, freaking let me in. She's like, it's pecking. And she took a picture. And she's like, I just have to show this to you because this duck is pecking at the screen like, let me in. And I have that picture somewhere. But at one point, there were people on the golf course also noticing what was going on. And they yelled up to her and asked her, because they assume she's doing something to attract them. So they yell up to her, are you feeding them? And I hear her yell down, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm not feeding them. And then all of a sudden, she takes me off speakerphone and she goes, oh my gosh. She goes, I think they're attracted to your voice. She goes, I think it's you. And so, like I said, she had taken me off speakerphone. And once she did, and she's still talking to me on the phone, not on speakerphone, she's like, now they're starting to go away. But that, like... the duck that was pecking at the screen, that was the last one to go away. She's like, this duck just like does, like, he's like persistent. He's like, let me in. But so my point is this: when you are doing things to try to attract your ancestors, it may seem like it's not having an effect. Just like when we do spiritual work and we're doing it every day, maybe for hours a day, even if it's broken up, we think it's not having an effect because we don't notice any changes in our life. Because, I mean, heck, okay, you might think, well, my life's not getting better. I'm still doing the same stuff. I'm not winning the lottery. Nothing huge is changing for me. So you may think it's not having an effect. But that's because, 1, sometimes it's subtle. And 2, you just haven't noticed it yet. Something hasn't happened that has caused you to realize a change. Okay, same thing works with trying to establish communication with your loved ones that's passed on. It may not be huge at first. Look, it's not like in the movies. You may not get the flashing lights. You may get the flashing lights. I don't know, because it also depends. Different spirits have different levels of vibration. It's almost like saying even their energetic strength is different. So some spirits might be stronger energetically and vibrationally than others. So some may be able to actually flick lights, make a door slam, make things move on the wall, whereas another spirit isn't as spiritually advanced, may not have the energetic strength to do that, if I'm making any sense. And believe it or not, I didn't read this. I've learned this over time and over experiences that I had. So I'm not telling you what I've read in books. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to pull your chain. I'm like, this is just from experiences I've had. Okay. So you have to be serious about this. You want to communicate with your spirits? Okay, got to start with that. What do they like? We're going to honor them first. Okay, as far as the candle, like when I lit a candle to go along with it, this doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to make your own candles. What I would recommend is go to the dollar store, and you know those tall glass pillar candles? Buy those. Whatever color you're guided to buy. If you see a pink one and you feel guided to buy that one. If you see the red one and something just screams, that's the one, I want to buy that one. Whatever you feel guided to buy, you buy that one. I would recommend, buy maybe buy four. I mean, they're $1. Buy 4 of them just so you have some, on hand for when you want them. And then, now it's up to you whether you want to light the candle and let it burn until it burns out, or whether you want to light it for a period of time, put it out, and then the next day when you put out the stuff for your loved one, light the candle. Now when you light the candle, this is one thing that I would recommend, and a friend of mine who is a Buddhist and who usually has Buddhist teachers shared this with me. He said, never light a candle, never light an incense without saying something. Whether it's a prayer, whether it's a mantra, whether it's just a simple dedication. So when you go to light the candle, it's kind of like you're lighting it and you're saying something to dedicate it at the same time, or saying what it's for. Like, for example, when I used to make candles, and my mother would tell me that one of my relatives was sick or in the hospital, I would make a candle for them, and when I would light it, I would state what I wanted for them, what I wanted to do. I would say something like, this is for their total and full healing. And then I, would light it I would say it as I was lighting it. So that's what you start with. The next thing you're going to do, and I really recommend that you do this periodically throughout the day. Say, for example, a couple times at least a day. Just talk out loud to them. Or maybe just in the morning, after you've done that, after you put all their stuff out, lit the candle, chat with them for a few minutes. Tell them what's going on in your life. Chat with them. Reminisce. What you're doing, you're making a connection. It's going to bring them forward. But you kind of have to, it's kind of like you have to believe that it will work without really being overly concerned about it. It's kind of like you need to just give it time, let it happen. Doesn't take very long. But now I want to warn you of one thing, is that not all spirits that have crossed over can come forward, because some souls that are, for example, maybe they are getting ready to reincarnate, or they've already reincarnated. Sometimes when you call them forward, they don't come forward because of that reason. Or if they've recently died and there was some trauma in their life or something, or trauma with when they died, they may be in a process of healing, and that may be the reason why they're not coming forward. Don't think the worst. You know what I mean? Don't think, they didn't cross over, they're stuck in this dimension. Don't think that. No, they may be going through a healing process. But that's all you start with. And then, I know I've said this before, that I don't really particularly like the flickering lights thing. However, I deal with it. It happens sometimes when I'm, dealing with the angels or Sin Masters. I mean, sometimes they're trying to acknowledge to me any way they can, hey, that they hear me. They're there and that they hear me. And so I deal with it, I accept it. I don't freak out about it. because I know that they're just trying to do the best that they can with trying to acknowledge and let me know, hey, we hear you, we hear what you're saying, or we see what you're going through. Sometimes when you're upset, and you can't feel anything, you can't hear anything, this is the way they try to get through to you, to let you know, hey, we hear you, we see what you're going through, you're not alone, we're here with you. So what I'm saying is, I know it's kind of unsettling, but try to be open to it. You know what I mean? Because that's really all it is. It's just an acknowledgement, like, hey, I hear you, I'm here. That's simply all it is. It's not like I'm here, I'm gonna haunt you from now until eternity. That's not what it is. There's nothing to be afraid of. But I get it if it freaks you out a little bit, because it still kind of freaks me out sometimes. Especially when I'm in a room by myself. That's when it seems like it always happens when I'm alone. I'm just like, why does that always happen when I'm alone? Nobody sees it. So then when other people come back into the room, I'm like, the lights flash. Did you see that? Now they're in another room and there's lights on, but their lights didn't flash. My lights flashed, but the lights in the room where I'm at flashed. But anyway, that's where you start your communication. Communicating with them metaphysically, that's a different thing. But I'll tell you, they're going to find a way to communicate with you. They're going to find a way to communicate with you. So you need to be paying attention to signs, symbols. It might come by way of nature. Like that dragonfly that suddenly almost flies into your windshield. Or you keep repeatedly seeing the same number. That's happened to me. Like you go to the grocery store and they're like, oh, wow, the amount is $777, $7.77. And then you get in your car, you drive off, car you're behind. Its license plate, the part of the number says 777. You're driving, look up at the billboard. Sure enough, again, here we go, 777. Okay, you pay attention to that because they'll try to get through to you. They'll try to send you a message. They'll try to send you a sign. Okay, 777 wasn't maybe the best example. Maybe 444, which like kind of signifies I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm looking out for you. It could also be ones. Like maybe if you just recently started this process of connecting with your loved one that passed on and you're now all of a sudden seeing multiples of ones. Okay, one signifies something new that you've started, but is also like kind of a validation that you started something new that's good. So this still is a good symbol. This still is them trying to get across to you, okay, keep going. This is good. Keep going. So this is where we're going to start, and we're just going to keep it very basic. Acknowledge them by putting out the things that they loved for them, to acknowledge them every day, and then keep your eyes open for the signs, the symbols they're going to send you, and talk to them every day. Just a little bit every day. Just have a conversation with them. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. Even if you haven't developed your abilities, you can still do this. Like I said, it can be this easy. Okay, so I hope that that's been helpful for you. Feel free to share your stories, your experiences when it comes to connecting with your loved ones that's passed on. I would love to hear it, and I'm sure everybody else who's also watching and reading the comments would love to hear about your experiences. And I really appreciate you and hope you have a wonderful day. Namaste.